Okay, Finance Committee, January 7th, 2021, 9 a.m. Amanda, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
McTaggart?
Yes. Call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Sherry, do we have a second?
Yes.
Bowers? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move to Myron Munyon and general liability insurance.
Everything's kind of at a standstill right now. I mean, we're in the middle, so are there any questions for me on any of the billing or claims or anything?
Don't think so.
There were some questions that came out of the last meeting for the policy. I didn't see it on the calendar. I missed it. I'm sorry. Jill had some questions. I answered those questions for the committee.
Okay,
So,
we're good then, Jill? or-
Yeah, that was just on the sexual harassment, and I have the, training PowerPoints that you sent over to me, which is great, and then Myron was just telling us that, as far as how it's gonna be audited for now, it's kind of up in the air, how it's gonna be audited. It's just good to have them all on file in case we do have a claim, and that way, we can prove that we did provide the training. Our auditor as well, I talked to Faith a little bit, and she had said that she just may ask for one or two to be pulled. So that's right, as of right now, is the only hitch there. If we do get a claim, let's say hypothetically, they go to ask for the certificate, we don't have it, then it could be anywhere from $1,000 on up for a fine. But that again is still, how it's gonna work is kind of up in the air, how they're gonna check that, so.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Myron.
thank you.
Susie's not here, so we'll move to department head reports. Bree.
We were just awarded yesterday a grant for voter registration. It's a yearly grant that we get through the state. So that was in the amount of $23,534. And that can be used for our voter registration system, which is our VMAX system. But it can also be used for our every other year purge that we have, which will be going on this year. So we'll be able to recoup some costs from that. So that's about it.
Okay, Sheriff.
Just a few things. In the next month or two, there'll probably be some RFPs going out on, or some bids going out on the north lot and sheriff's lot at the courthouse for resurfacing, and also the retrofitting the doors and the cell blocks in the jail. Those will be going out for bid. I've got 2 correctional officers that probably sometime this spring will be going to the academy. They've scaled back on the academies due to COVID. They cut back on the numbers that they had and the number of correctional officers they let attend. But as of right now, I've got 2 of them scheduled to go in February, and it's a 5-week academy. It's 200 hours. And that's about it right now, I think.
Very good. Kurt?
The only thing, we did press release, I think Sam did one earlier this week about mobile home bills will be coming out in March, so if anybody's got any changes, they need to get in touch with her, so that way we can get all that cleaned up. So we don't have, make sure we're billing the right people who still have mobile homes out there and who don't, so. Other than that, not much else, so.
Okay. Jill?
Well, the audit process is still, going smoothly so far. They did their preliminary work. I'm still in communication with Faith, going back and forth with hopefully getting that completed in a timely manner this year. Also, Kurt had asked me about the BB&T loan
That's under new business.
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
my bad,
Well, we
okay.
just-
Well, whatever, yeah.
Just whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter,
Talk
but
about whatever.
anyways, there's some funds left there that we were going to ask if we could move into capital improvement, because capital improvement, Fund 145 is where the payments come out of. And there also is a line already there with the 43,000 from previous year, that will go towards paying the loan off as soon as our, time frame is open to make extra payments.
I guess, do we wanna, I was gonna wait and talk about it in new business, but
That's fine, and we can wait, I just kind of
there,
bring it up.
I have one new hire that I'm hiring for. Again, unfortunately, this last one termed her employment with us on 12/31. So I've got one applicant that I'm gonna do a quick interview with, and probably look at my previous applicants to get a butt in the seat is ASAP. Unfortunately, Chief Dominic Smith and his wife passed away shortly after Christmas. He was a chief down at Woodland Fire, so just respect to mention that. And last night, the ETSB met with Sheriff. This was something that we had talked about with our public safety software suite last month. I had made a brief mention on it. I don't know if we want to discuss that under new business. We do have some discussion with it, so it's up to you.
we'll just do it in new business, I guess, yeah, that'll be fine. Okay,
That's it.
anything else? John, you got anything you wanna add, or?
Well, a couple of things that I could mention. As you know, we yearly struggle with funding the joint dispatch. I had some conversations with Representative Bennett the other day, encouraging him to introduce some legislation down in Springfield to increase the telephone surcharge. He seems amenable to doing that, so we're working on that with him right now. I suggested an increase up to $3 would be something that would allow us to reach a break-even point. And so I don't know if that's exactly where he's gonna go, but I believe so. I also discussed with him about a unfortunate event that seems to be occurring throughout the state right now, where many people are receiving unemployment benefits that they didn't ask for. And that's happened here in this county. It's happened to some of our county employees. And apparently, it's a criminal act that's being perpetrated by someone down in Springfield that must work in the IDS system. But the people are getting debit cards, and I'm sure that some of them are going out and using them, so it's costing the state a lot of money. There's also a criminal act that's going on, so I encourage Representative Bennett to look into that. He told me that he's already aware of the problem and that he and other legislators have spoken to the governor about it. And the governor apparently has turned his head the other way and doesn't want to even talk about it. So I'm not, I think it's a situation that we probably need to try and stay on top of. Amanda's got some, if somebody wants some details, she can tell you. I think we got 9 or 10 county employees now that have been affected by this. And isn't,
Why would someone do that?
well,
Just
I'm not sure that I can
taxpayers,
answer
or-
the question, but
It seems bizarre.
well, one of the things that's a very disturbing aspect to it is that people's social security number and other vital information such as their wages is also included with this. So it becomes somewhat common knowledge, I guess, or could be.
Right.
And so it's something that I was encouraging Representative Bennett, to look into and so forth, so. Other than that, the law enforcement contract that we've been working on, the sheriff and I with Gilman and Onarga, has been somewhat stalemated because of the holidays and a couple other events. I reached out to the mayor of Gilman last week about getting another meeting scheduled, but I have not heard back from him yet, so that's kind of where that issue is at too.
What, are they meeting, is the General Assembly and planning, I mean, this isn't really our business, but just out of curiosity, since we've been talking to Tom, are they, what's their schedule like? Are they actually meeting, or?
They're supposed to meet tomorrow for the first time,
Okay.
and that relates to their lame duck session from last fall.
Right.
And then I guess it's in 2 weeks when they'll begin a new organization down there. But this deal with 911 is something that's scheduled to sunset later this year, and if something is gonna be done differently, it has to be done during the spring session. That's why I reached out to them now about getting something started.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll move on to claims. Is there something else? Well, I was gonna look on my phone, but. What's going on with area-wide, Jill, or? Oh.
And I think we're paying for all the renewals with, for renewals. It seemed like there was a lot of renewal stuff in there.
What was that?
A lot of renewals for area wide.
Yeah, the yearly
Yeah.
renewals come normally this time of year.
I know some of them, there were questions, so some of
Whereas
those
we're
were
waiting.
back, waiting for questions to be answered on it, so some of them were kind of held back a little bit.
I saw that there were several on the board. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If there aren't any more questions, then we need a motion to approve the claims. Give a second. Need to call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Curtis, Hughes, Johnson, Young,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, claims are paid, old business. And if not old business, we got your issues, Kurt, and then we'll go back to the TSB thing. So,
Okay, well, like I said, the BB&T bank money that's still laying there, I guess. You guys must, whatever, that came from that smart lock project you were doing. That was the loan, I guess the loan proceeds from them. So some of the monies that's still left in there, I presume must have been paid out of the funds that you had originally. And so, like I said, we've still got that bank account that's still coming from wherever, South Carolina or wherever. So we just wanted to get rid of it and just put the money back into First Trust or somewhere just to consolidate it in with our other funds, so.
Is that what we got paid back from them?
Well, actually, that's where the loan came, was from, what's in that bank account. The loan proceeds all came, but it was like 600 and some thousand, is that right?
So it's money we haven't spent or we spent out of the general fund and it's just still sitting over there?
Right, right. It's money that got paid towards the project. Basically, we just wanna take and move the loan money, and put it into an account that's more local, and will be utilized for Fund 145, which is where our loan payments are coming out of.
Oh, okay.
So that money that we transferred, we can next.
We can't pay early
Right.
or whatever, yeah.
No, so we created,
So we're just gonna put it in
Right.
We're
right.
the other,
Mhm.
we're, just hold it locally until
Right.
we can repay it.
Right.
I don't see an issue with that. So what do we need to do? Have a motion to close that account? and move
I
the
can
money?
do it, but I just thought I'd bring it up and let you guys decide if you wanna just make a motion, like I said, just close it, that way.
Okay.
And we can just transfer it into First Trust and be done with it, so.
Okay.
Is that an interest-bearing account then?
Well, what I'll probably do is First Trust is paying, I think, whatever, 1/4%. But, the CD that was also on the banks, on the trial balance and stuff, the 500,000 came due at Iroquois Federal. And so I moved that money into, just a regular savings account at Illinois Funds, because they're paying almost 1%, which is the highest I can find right now. And that's liquid, so I mean, if we need to borrow it, or take it out of there again, it's not locked up for 6 months or anything, so if we wanna do that with this other money, we could stick it in with that too, and that way it'd earn a little more interest than just leaving it in. It's whatever you guys,
I mean, if it's just gonna sit there, for how long is it till we can pay it back? Or
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I want to quote it was sometime in 2025.
we might as well get something on it then.
Yeah. It was a few years. We had to make so many payments before we could repay.
Then I'd make a motion that we take the money out of the account, the BB&T account, and move it to
I'll just invest wherever I can find the best interest rate within the county.
and find the best investment. To hold there, so we earn interest on it while waiting for the day we can repay it. Steve seconds. Questions or comments? If not, we need to take a roll call vote.
Bowers?
Yes.
Curtis?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Johnson? Young?
Yes.
McTaggart?
Yes. Okay, very good.
Sheriff, did you want to start, or?
Sure. Last night at 5, I met with, I went to the ETSB meeting, for the purpose of discussing, the upgrading that they're doing for their CAD, computer-aided dispatching, software. Currently, CAD in the jail, which it has, it's called InterSlam, and civil process, it's a group, a suite, whatever you want to call it, and it's all together. It's been that way basically since Emergitech came in and set it up, and it is a benefit to the sheriff's office, it's a benefit to dispatch, it's a benefit to the users of it, because all the information is there and you don't have separate software programs. So ETSB is looking at upgrading theirs, and that would, they can do it one of two ways. They can either just upgrade the CAD system and leave the sheriff's office alone, or it can all get upgraded again and work together. So when I met with them, they had a quote, roughly $183,000. 50,000 of that, thereabouts, would be what the cost for the sheriff's side of it would be, which is the booking in prisoners. Civil process is also involved in that. And so when this was all set up 20 years ago, ETSB was flush with money, and they bought the system, and they were paying the annual maintenance on it and everything. Well, times obviously have changed. So they met with me and just wanted to know what my ideas were on it. And my idea is it needs to be done all at once. I think that's going to be best in the long run for everyone involved, rather than trying to wait and in a year or two try to bring the sheriff's side up to it with monies. and patch it in there. When we talked with the Central Square, which is the provider they're looking at going with, when we talked with them, if the sheriff would wait a year or so to do it, that would be considered a separate project, so there's going to be added project costs on that because it's a separate project, so it would probably be over the $50,000. So I told the board what my preference was, which was I'd like to see it all done at once so that it's a smooth transition, and whether it's the deputies, the COs, or the telecommunicators, they're familiar with the system. It's going to be a smooth transition into that because everything's going to transfer over and stay as one. So I wanted to come here and talk with you folks about it. Again, the 50,000 is probably the high end of it. Might be a little bit under that, but that's ballpark 50,000 out of that $183,000 cost. And I think it's something that needs to be done. I know you've already approved your budget, and we're 5 weeks into that budget. But if it's not done now, it's going to cost a little more if we try to do it later. And I think it's just the time to do it now. They've been with Emergitech since 911 started, and Central Square purchased Emergitech.
Yeah, they've
took
been
it over.
wrapped up into several different companies, and this is the latest of that capital venture.
So it's like I said, it's a system we're used to. It's a system that can transition fairly smoothly, and I'm sure one of the questions is going to be, where's the funds come from? Well, it seems like anything that's had to do with dispatch or with joint dispatch or with anything like that the money's been coming out of public safety. There is money there, obviously, for it.
Was the intention, so we talked a little bit about this, I think, in IT last month.
I wasn't able to attend the IT last month, so whatever discussion you
I
had
feel like we
wasn't.
talked about this at some high level. But
I could
this
say
was
in
coming down.
finance, I mentioned it briefly that we were gonna have a
Doesn't matter
conversation,
when,
but that was it.
I could be completely wrong about that, but were you saying, I feel like when you mentioned that, and obviously it was very early on, and I'm probably not remembering correctly, that it might have been for next fiscal year, or are you thinking this fiscal year?
Part of the project is gonna be this fiscal year. The ETSB's tabled this to see what the finance committee's thoughts and opinions were, and ultimately the county board. I've got some additional paperwork if anybody would like to look at it.
So is it in your ETSB budget?
We're gonna have to reopen ours, potentially. We do have $150,000 sitting in our contingent that we could move around right at the moment. The total amount that's really gonna come from us is about 137-ish. And we've already got that covered under our contingent. It's just simply moving it into the appropriate line item.
Do you guys generally have a $150,000 contingency?
We also had a planned, we put 150 in there because we have a radio system that is old. It is almost as old as the computer-aided dispatch software, which if it were to go down would be at a minimum of 100,000 starting, if that were to go down on us. There's also a planned project that I have to also upgrade our generator. We're expecting that to be in the 30 to maybe 40 range. That's why we have a contingency so high. Rather than taking the money and just allowing it to fall to the bank account, this way we wouldn't have to open our budget. If there was one of those opportunities, we put it into contingency versus just allow it to go into the bank account.
And you do that every year?
No, this is the first year we've done it that way. It also kept everything in the black. it's not common for us to do it, that, and that large. Usually if I've got a project, I put it in the appropriate line item, but the board saw fit to move it around in contingency.
I mean, I guess my personal thought is, I think it does make sense that it's all done as one cohesive thing. But the money part of it is just,
We could also mention the monetary side of it. It's about $50,000 for the jail side of it and the civil process side of it. If you were to take that project and do it separately, I've got a question out to the vendor right now to find out exactly how much that might be, or at least a good ballpark. I'm anticipating the 50,000 would grow to probably 70 to 80 because you're gonna have a lot more extras by doing it as a separate project. You're gonna have a separate project manager, you're gonna have to go back through the database, hash all of that data, and then add it into the current database. So it can be potentially much more gargantuan by the time that it's actually done if it were to be considered as a separate project.
I get the idea of it, and I think it makes sense what the sheriff's saying, but I think those things, we gotta have some clarity on that stuff before.
And from what the vendor,
At a bare minimum.
from the notes I took last night with the vendor, if ETSB approves the project and they sign, upon their approval, within 10 days, they'll have a contract to them. And at the basically signing of that contract, 50% of is due, so 92,000 roughly, whatever you're talking. And then there's a second payment, which would be 3 to 4 months into the project, which would be 30% of that cost. And then upon completion and they fire it up and it all works like it's supposed to, the last 20%. And they're saying 9 to 12 months roughly it could take from the time they start the project to finish it. So that's why it could technically go into the 2022 budget year. So it's something that I think, however you folks want to talk about and decide how to do it, that's what the breakdown would be. Would that last 20%, which you're talking, I don't know, 36,000 or 40,000, wouldn't probably be paid to the vendor until the 2022 budget.
My expectation is this project will last at the year mark. So we will be into the 22 budget before payments ready to be mailed out.
I guess, how long have you been talking? I mean, I get it all, and I understand it needs to be done, but how long have you been talking to the vendor? This just happened last month, or?
We started the process, we started the RFP in October. We got bids back in November, or we got bids back in October, excuse me. So we started the process in September. COVID kind of really cinched a lot of things on me, to be honest with you, trying to get projects like this done. I think we all can admit we were hoping that this was going to close off a little bit sooner than it has. So that project ended up getting a lot more delayed than I was originally anticipating. My anticipation was to start the RFP in January of 20. So we would have been able to have good solid numbers come budget and budget hearings. We didn't have any of that information until October. The board, the ETSB, has kind of been looking at numbers and trying to be financially conscious, and when they were looking at it, well, they wanted to segregate off the sheriff's portion of the budget, which is why we're here today. So I guess it does feel a little bit fast, but we were getting down to numbers. We tabled the conversation several times, and we wanted to give Sheriff an opportunity to see what his thoughts were and where he wanted to go with the project as well.
So, Sheriff, just to kind of clarify, so for FY20, we're thinking, because what I'm understanding is 50,000 is gonna be required from your department. So we're looking at 32,500 for FY20, and then the remaining 17,500 for FY21. roughly?
Roughly, I mean, if it works out that, yes.
How many bidders and all that stuff, I guess?
I've got some packets, I'll go ahead and pass them around.
I get there's COVID, and I get Charlie's our representative that's been sick and all that stuff, but quite frankly, if we were talking about this in October and we didn't know about it, I mean, the budget wasn't even passed, I mean,
I'll be honest, I did not know where this conversation was gonna completely go until it got there. It was not something that I anticipated myself. So what I'm
it
getting
sounds
to
like
is,
we were trying to work on it a year ago, so I think, no offense, but it sounds like we did kind of think that this was gonna go this way.
I think the talk has been that the system needs upgraded. It was brought to my attention sometime in December what the cost would be on the sheriff's side of it, and that the BTSB board was leaning towards the sheriff picking up the sheriff's cost.
so we have 3 packets, so you're gonna have to pass them around between each other. The legal size packet is gonna have all of our different vendors. We received a total of 5 different vendors, costs going all the way from a minimum of about $110,000 all the way up to just over $500,000. With that, excuse me, over on the far right-hand side column, you're going to see a first year cost. So this is what's going to cost initially, depending on each vendor. Then the second column is going to be what year 2 cost is, and finally on the far right-hand side, you'll see a 10-year cost. The 10-year cost is quite a bit. It sounds like a lot of money, but you got to remember this is annual maintenance that's coming through, and it's also, unless they gave me specific numbers, it's a 3% increase every single year. There's an email in there that came from Nicolette Smith in one of the other packets. This one is going to cover another project idea, which was actually going in with Kankakee County. Now, Kankakee County is obviously a lot larger. They have purchased their entire suite. It's a lot more expensive what they put out up front. So if we tie into this system, it is going to cost us $75,000 every single year. By the time I was done with the anticipated cost for it, it was actually going to end up being far more expensive than actually purchasing the product outright ourselves at that 10-year cost. It was like close to 1.2 or 1.3 if I remember the numbers correctly off the top of my head. The third one that is out there is a packet from Central Square. This is removing the sheriff's side of it. So the entirety of the jail and civil gets completely removed. That cost is to the ETSB alone at $137,000. Now again, we would like to see this project go off together. It's cheaper for everybody involved to have a lot of this project handled at one time than it is to do it separately. Now, whatever the case may be there.
Why is it, is this Tyler Tech one or whatever that Kankakee's using, it's just a more expensive program? Well, obviously the maintenance cost is through the roof, but what is the, I guess,
Going through
Why is there so
Kankakee
much
is
more?
not on that one. That is an email version, so one of the other packets that I gave you should be an email. That is a starting off cost, initial cost of $250,000. That's first year. Then it's going to be a $75,000 cost, also first year. And that $75,000 was also given a 3% increase every single year out through year 10, so it ended up being more expensive than the current quote. One occupational hazard of using the Kankakee version and tying in with them is if they're down, we're down. So if something were to happen to their computer system, whether system maintenance, whether somebody came through and hacked their system, ransomware, so on and so forth, Once they're down, we're down. Now, that doesn't kill our 911 system, and it doesn't kill our jail system. It does a little more damage on the sheriff's end of it because you really can't do anything at all. At least 911, we can still function on a paper basis. Is my staff going to be happy about it? No, neither am I, but we'll muddle through.
So in that central square, pardon me for looking stupid here, I think, but,
Not at all. It's a lot of information.
well, and you look at this, and then you look at this, and,
So the second Central Square packet that you're looking at, that is with the jail software completely removed. So that is
Removed, okay.
ETSD's only cost,
okay, I got
which is about where we're getting that 50,000 from. It's when we remove the jail software out with the original quote, that's where the 137 in there is coming from.
you. And again, I'm noticing that on this packet, it has the government capital corporation financing option. Tell me about that. Does that make it far more expensive, or does that break it down enough that we could do this a little bit more without Mike having a heart attack up there?
To be honest with you, ETSD, I did not anticipate exploring a financing option, so I do not have a lot of information. All of the vendors usually give a financing option because they know that this is a large project and many don't have that type of capital sitting in their coffers.
Well, I'm very concerned about you cleaning out that contingency fund. As you said, other things that could go wrong. I mean, that's just my, until we're into the new budget, that would be something that I would consider. I don't know if I'm the only one that's like that, but I'd like to go a little cautiously before.
To be honest, since this project was so late, personally, I already expected to be at least planned for opening the budget on the ETSD side of it. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do, but since the project itself was already gone so late, the kickoff of it really wasn't ideal in the situation. But since we had been talking about it, we had the paperwork, everything had started, we still needed to know what kind of numbers we were looking at. Even if the ETSD decided to table it until further down into the fiscal year, at least we had numbers. And the worst case scenario is we might just have to refresh those numbers.
So if you guys didn't decide to do financing, could sheriff's side just decide? And I say that because that public safety tax, I just feel like sometimes it's like that big pot of gold that might dry up for us, and I don't want it.
That for sure has been, and when you look at, since the county's been collecting on it, I don't have the most recent, like, January of 21 numbers, but through the end of fiscal year 20, which was November 30th, there's roughly been about $605,000 of that money that have been used for either joint dispatch or ETSB type things. This year there's $150,000 coming out of it going to joint dispatch for salaries. So, not to mention the $78,000 that the county's paying out of general fund. So, the county is putting $228,000 into joint dispatch for salaries and benefits. It does seem like it's kind of been that cash cow, so to speak. And has it stayed?
But it sounds like it's not gonna end. I mean, there's
Well,
a $100,000 radio system and,
That's not coming out of county funds in any way, shape, or form.
indirectly, we all pay for it.
well, yeah.
I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but
Yeah.
if you spend an extra $100,000, it's got,
The
Boogeyman's not paying for it.
what's hitting right now, and it's always something, and I know Mr. McTaggart over the years talked about projecting out and looking what we have to do long term. Right now, we've got, when you look at things that at least happen at the sheriff's complex and the courthouse, both roofs are in good shape, but in the next probably 15 years, they're gonna have to look at the jail roof again. We're replacing the north parking lot now. South one got replaced 2 years ago, but again, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you might have to put money in that again. We're updating the cell block areas. At some point, that's gonna have to happen. Those are all happening right now. There's gonna be a few years there where there's gonna be a lull, where there's not gonna be these big projects that are happening to come out of it. But the problem is, a few years after that, there's going to be those big projects coming back. So the cycle of big capital improvement projects over there, it kind of seems like they all hit within the same 2 to 3 to 4 year time frame, and then there's 5 to 10 years where you don't have those, and then they start coming back. So yeah, it's as far as upgrades, the only thing, we don't have any software system. We don't have everything we have at the sheriff's office, and that is tied in with 911.
Right.
So we're on their time schedule. Whenever they upgrade, it's probably in our best interest to upgrade as well with it. And
I get that part. And you may have already said it and I didn't catch it, but why, I guess I know this system's old, but why specifically are we upgrading it now? I mean,
Well, the current software package that we're on is 20 years old. The Central Square as a company has already gone through on many of their current projects and started sunsetting them. The only updates that we're getting is federal and state mandates. We're not getting any new bells, new whistles, no anything. There's going to be an eventual point, they're going to stop the whole thing. So a lot of this is also getting in front of that curve, so we don't have to make a snap decision and potentially even more costly.
if they've given you no timeline of when that is, or?
I don't know if that could be tomorrow. I don't know if that could be in 2 or 10 years. Unfortunately, with the way that the company is running right now, they are still supporting it. So if something breaks, we can still call them, we can still get help. But if they eventually sunset, it's a sunset, and we need to move when they do that sunset. Now, again,
But I don't think companies, if these guys are that shady, maybe we don't want to do a new deal with them. But every tech company I've seen in the ag world, we deal with Ag Leader and Trimble and those companies, they give you a heads up that, hey, we aren't servicing this. You got a year, and then we're not doing updates for that monitor or this GPS system. I mean, I can't imagine that.
they have not
They just
seen,
in the middle of the night say, oh, by the way, tomorrow you're screwed.
they have not seemed like they're doing that level onto anybody there. So far, I think it's been about a year from the one peer that I do know that's been on one of their other products. So they're not swooping in, hey, 6 months goodbye. But there's still that opportunity that whenever they sunset it, this is just putting us ahead of that curve, and then we're not trying to make those decisions again. Even a year is still a snap decision on what's going on, because the project itself is going to last a year. So if they give us a year, now we're going to have to take 4 to 5 months to get the RFP, get the vendors that we want, make a recommendation, speak with the county board, try and work with that all in tandem, make sure that our IT is ready to go. I mean, there's a lot more inside of that project that would put us outside of that potential sunset.
I guess since I've been on the board, and this predates your time, and I know there's the state mandates and whatever else with the being on the backbone system and whatever all that stuff was, but it seems like we spend a pile of money on doing this, the county does, the taxpayers do. I mean, I get that's the ETSB decision, but it's not ours necessarily, but on new systems and stuff every year. And it sounds like there's another couple $100,000 if we did this after this one. Is there ever a point where we're caught up, or is this just status quo? We got to spend $250,000 every year to keep this facility up and running?
When you deal with software, I can only make that guarantee. You also sit on the IT committee. It's a constant refresh of software and hardware.
Well, I understand. I guess we haven't ever had, or at least I haven't ever seen what that plan is, because we try and have on the IT committee a plan of, okay, next year we gotta replace this server and that one, and we make decisions on, no, we're gonna kick that back to the next year and those kind of things. And I guess I'm not on the ETSB board, but I presume you guys have that plan of all these things that have to be done. And with that, you should be able to, with some certainty, say, yep, we're gonna spend $250,000 for the next 5 years. I mean, or whatever the number is. I mean, that has to exist, otherwise, I mean, and I guess that just, there's just a lot of overhead to service 26,000 people. But
It is.
I guess we probably need to understand what the true cost is before we can do anything, because if you're saying it's not 50,000, it's maybe 75,000, we need to know that.
Well, the cost that we have that is in that packet from Central Square includes the jail software. So if you were to approve that, you would be committing to approximately $50,000.
Yeah, but you said there's additional expenses for this project.
No. When it is going to be additional, so you have the other packet from Central Square with a quote for $137,000. That is ETSB's money. That is just for the CAD that does not have a jail. That is where we're predicting the 70 to 80 in total cost. Because at that point, it is an entirely separate project for the sheriff's department. And that is going to be that's going to be a separate project managers, because we're now separating the two projects. So if it's a year or two down the road where sheriff is now able to join in their JMS system or jail management system in with our current product that we are considering, then it would be that extra cost. If you do that today, the $183,000 that is already in that packet, that's all it is. So then we go back to what Jill's numbers was talking for the 50%, 30%, 20%. Jill, can you split those?
Yeah.
numbers again?
FY20 would be a total of 32,500, and then
And then what do we owe
FY20.
each year going forward then?
There will be expenses in there that's wrapped up for maintenance. Off the top of my head, I do not know those numbers. They are,
So this says in total it's 21,329 and goes up 3%, but a portion of that or something in
a
it?
portion of that will still be sheriff's as well.
And what do we spend on that now
Right now, you're at about 6,000
every year?
annually,
The sheriff's side.
the sheriff's
Right,
side.
yeah.
We-
And then ETSB pays their quarterly maintenance portion too.
Our quarterly maintenance in total, including the sheriff, is $9,000 per month, or per quarter. So $36,000 in annual maintenance minus sheriff's 6,000. So about 30,000 is coming out of the ETSB coffers for maintenance. And that is only for the CAD system. The phone system's a separate thing, so if you come through, you'll see that as well. And that's an annual, like, 24,000.
So there's a potential savings there of some amount.
Correct.
Do they give you any credit for the maintenance that you haven't used?
Not by much, if any. The one good thing about this while we continue to pay maintenance, and this is a very big benefit, they still continue to maintain the server. And then in 5 to 7 years, when that is ready to be decommissioned, that is covered inside of the maintenance. So we don't have any added cost of having to buy a new server. Everything gets transferred over by them. No cost to the county or the ETSB. Some of the other vendors, we had to go and buy our own product, which means we would have to have our IT maintain it. And at the end, when it's ready to be decommissioned, we would have to buy another server and decommission the other server. The vendor would still be able to maintain the actual software, but we could still be responsible for the hardware. So if there's other failures, we're on the hook for it.
And what's their stipulation if something should happen to that company in that amount of time?
I know that question's been asked, but I cannot remember what the response was off the top of my head. If the company were to go bankrupt and completely eliminate itself, what are we going to be responsible for at that point? At that point, we'd have to find a new software vendor. That would be my short, blindered answer to give you an answer today.
A gray area that might need to be cleared up just in today's times.
I guess I understand why it makes sense for the sheriff to do it with it, and I don't have an issue with that, is my feeling. But the two things I do kind of have an issue with are, one, it sounds like we're doing this just as we don't want to get it's old, and that we just decided it was time, not because there's actually a problem with it. And I don't know if that means it's actually necessary or not, and I guess I don't deal with it every day, so I don't know, but it sounds like it's just more of not a life or death kind of situation, for sure. But that, and then it just bothers me that we're sitting in January and we just passed the budget, and ETSB put $150,000 buffer to help cover this, and we didn't even know it was, I mean, maybe that, I wasn't aware, that's saying a lot, that this was even on the horizon. If it was ever mentioned, it was in passing and not, oh, by the way, the county might be on the hook for 50 grand or 100 grand or 25 grand. I mean, that conversation, if it happened, it wasn't very clear at the time or explained very well that we should be putting something in the buffer. Hey, we're getting bids, whatever, because the ETSB wouldn't have put a 150,000, as you said, contingency in there for the first time ever. I didn't even know that was, I guess, sitting there, but that just, I think it would have been a hell of a lot easier to get all this stuff pushed through if we would have had that, if that conversation would have been going on in September and October. And now it makes it a hell of a lot more clunky than it needs to be. And the worst part of it is that now, if ETSB's held bent that this is what they're gonna do, our back's up against the wall, and we don't really have even a choice or a conversation really to have, is the unfortunate. I mean, I guess we do, but it's gonna cost us a hell of a lot more, and it's just unfortunate that this is the way it's being handled, as far as I'm concerned.
I did get confirmation from the vendor. He said that's not a bad guess at the 70 to 80.
Well, yeah.
Not that it helps your conversation at all.
No, because, yeah. So our back's up against the wall, and we either pay a 50% premium or we do it. I mean, and with no warning, I mean, to use an eloquent term, it's kind of a bullshit way to do things. But I guess that's the situation we're in.
Usually most bids are good for about 6 months.
I don't feel like we need to, I personally, I mean, anyone can make a proposal or to vote on whatever they want at this time.
Well, you said that
but I would
ETSB has tabled it.
I personally was gonna say we should.
In order to find out what the finance committee's opinion and ultimately the county board's opinion, it was tabled for this month as well, because we met last night.
Right.
So we're not gonna meet until February anyways.
So I guess my question would be, if we table this, if the bids are good for 6 months, if we tabled this and revisited it more in like May or June, is that gonna be detrimental to anything?
Are you gonna stop 911 from working, or are you gonna stop the sheriff's office from working? No, we're still gonna have business as usual with our current software product.
Smooth, not, it's out of it.
No, you're not gonna create any
I don't
impacts
know.
that are so detrimental that we're not gonna be able to.
Well, I just thought we'd be closer to the newer,
But
you know.
either way, the first money's gotta be laid down when you say you're gonna be doing it, so the, whatever, the 37 or what do you
No,
say?
their original 50% would be for 25,000.
So we're gonna have to pay 25,000.
I didn't say something, you know, some government. Public safety tax.
I think two things, as far as I'm concerned, is we need to look at that public safety stuff. I think there probably is the money there, but we need to look at it again, and I haven't looked at those numbers this week and where we're at on all that stuff.
As
That
of
we're spending on
today,
it.
in public safety, I'm showing 388,907.
But how much do we have that's coming out of it this year?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 225.
But that
Well,
we had,
No,
but we-
No.
I apologize.
At the end of the year,
Three-
we
It was
projected.
375.
375.
375 is coming out of it this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're adding, what was it? How much a month?
Well, usually anywhere from 31 to 34,000, that range. Sometimes it's 37, 38, but
Be on the safe side, around 32.
yeah.
So, I mean, basically what we're spending this year already out of it was probably gonna be covered by what's coming in, but
My purpose for, well, first off, to come here and see all of your smiling faces, but my purpose to come here was, I wanted to make you aware of it because when, I think it was in December, when the numbers were given to me of, what the total cost would be, and again, initially when that system was created, ETSB paid the cost of everything and it didn't come to the county board. This time, the board members on there feel that the sheriff should pay the sheriff's side of it, so last month when the $50,000 figure was thrown at me, I said, okay, and I went to their next meeting, which was last night, and then I wanted to come and talk to you folks about it. So, my opinion on it, it's not as if the house is burning down, but something is going to have to be done, whether it's 6 months, a year, whatever. Something's going to have to be done.
I guess, no, I understand, I get that. I guess I would move to table it and
Maybe we could table it and can you condense those figures for us into one thing so that it's a little, I like that visual to see across and see what it's gonna cost.
Most of the
us for
condensation you already have, I can try and condense it even further.
Or just so that we can actually each have a copy of it so that, and then maybe again, a projection on our public safety tax money so that we can see, you know, just so we feel it. So we can figure out what
yes. We'll table it till next month, put it on the agenda. And John, you got anything to ask, or thoughts?
I guess the one thing that occurs to me listening to all of the discussion here is that it underscores the need for us to get that telephone surcharge increased. because again, it's where's the money gonna come from and so forth. And I think this is something that's a very vital need, but it isn't gonna happen unless we make a lot of noise about it. I've got Representative Bennett very interested, but it's gotta go further than that. Yesterday, I met with Chad McGinnis after the judicial meeting and instructed him to contact the people down at UCCI in Springfield and see what other counties in the state are in a similar condition or situation that we're in, to try and get together greater support that way. But I think every
I
one
guess
of us.
if they don't pass that though, John, it's
What?
I guess if the state decides they don't wanna do that, I mean, it's almost gonna force consolidation, is it not?
If the state does not continue the current fees that they had sunsetted and then they furthered that out, if they don't continue that, then there's gonna be a catastrophic problem with most of the dispatch centers in the state. Whether it's forced consolidation or what, but if it goes back to the old rates that they were collecting, it's gonna, yeah.
I think the old rate was about half, a little shade above it, was like 89 cents.
One thing that's also significant is that somewhere around 1995, the county board passed an ordinance for a $2 a month surcharge on the phone systems. And that was obviously put aside by when the state enacted their legislation. But to me, that indicated at that time the thinking on the county board as to what was needed in order to fund the joint dispatch system in the county. And if you projected inflation, we should maybe even be around $4 or so right now. Based on what our budgets are for joint dispatch and ETSP, $3 would give us about a break-even point. And that's what I've asked Representative Bennett to work on getting us that opportunity. He's told me he's already started working on a bill for that. That's as far as I know right now. This has all happened in the last couple of days. And I've waited until now in anticipation of when this legislature was gonna meet again down in Springfield.
So what is it right now? You're saying $3.
$1.50.
$1.50.
It's still $2 for the landline, because that was county ordinance, but in 95, well, actually, I think it got voted in 94, 911 got voted in 94. There weren't as many cell phones as there are now, and there were a lot more landlines then than there are now. And so it was $2 per landline. And at one point, it was like,
This is what we want to do, but I even like the idea that if you could do that on landlines, can you do that on cell phones?
well, that's been the big fight. The Cellco companies have been obviously against it to begin with, and the added thing in on it too is some of those are collected based on where your bill goes, what your zip code is. So people who maybe live in the county or work in the county or whatever, but their phone is billed somewhere else, you know, Iroquois County's not realizing that.
That's
Surcharge.
Even if you have somebody driving down from Chicago and they call 911 to use our system, are they paying for our system? No, but they're still a user of that system.
And I know
That's
the state government's not as dysfunctional normally, but now really dysfunctional. Are they even talking about this? Wasn't there at one time the state police and stuff taking over stuff, or I don't know, maybe.
Well, there's been a lot of ideas floated. The state police have consolidated their dispatch centers. Every district used to have one, and now I think they've maybe got 4 or 5 in the state. But they're all on the same radio system. They're on the Starcom system. And so that system is the same from Cairo to Chicago. The problem you would have if the state taking over dispatch for the counties and municipalities, you're going to have to all be on the same system. You're going to have to I mean, obviously there's going to be more dispatchers and stuff like that run, but the headache I think initially Starcom, the radio system the state used, when they set that up, they were hoping that a lot of locals were going to get on that and use that system. But for smaller agencies, it's cost prohibitive buying the equipment, and then you have a monthly fee for each portable and each mobile radio that you have. And so, yeah, there's been talk about that going on, and there's talk about, I think down south there are some counties that have consolidated services because of cost. So that's something that's continually going on. And if the state rescinds the increase on the cell phone surcharge, there's going to be a lot more talk about it, because you're going to have municipalities and counties that can't afford to do it without that. With any decrease, I guess, in the surcharge, they're going to be forced to talk consolidation.
So if I can tap into this,
We can't afford it the way it is.
911 calls, you'll see this at the Iroquois County Board meeting. I produced that ETSB. There's always the column with percentage of landlines versus cell phones. This past month, 15% was landlines, 85% was cell phones that were receiving 911 calls. To talk more into the Starcom part of it, the cost of a handheld radio is between $3,000 and $5,000 per radio. The cost of a base radio is between $8,000 to $10,000. So when we say cost prohibitive, just the actual equipment itself, we have fire departments, for example, that have budgets of $30,000. And then they have to supply radios for all of their apparatus, let alone those individuals that are still communicating. So there's a lot of challenge with that. And then
Just play
the
devil's
monthly
advocate
fees.
on that. How many radios do we have in the county? I mean,
We have a total.
not just the county, I mean, the fire departments.
Oh.
Yes.
Fire and EMS, we have a total of about 450 firefighters in EMS. Almost every single one of them have a radio on them.
A portable, I would say. Yeah, most firemen probably have a portable on them. On the county level, we've got, I think, mobile radios, which are in the squads. I'm going to say 12. And then we've got 15 portables for deputies, and we've probably got 25 portables and 12 mobiles.
There's a reason why I didn't anticipate going on the Starcom from the 911 side.
And I'm not for sure what you get a monthly bill from the state as well for each portable and each mobile that you have. And it's been so long since I've looked at that, I don't know what the monthly fee is per radio.
What's that? Yeah. All right, well, I guess we'll table it, and then we got to vote, or what do we got to do? A second to table it. Sherry seconds. And a voice vote. All in favor of tabling? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you for all the information there.
Welcome.
Does anybody, we got anything else new? Any other new business? If not, take a motion to adjourn. You have a second? Sherry, all in favor? Aye. Can we keep these, or do you want these back?
You can have.
Okay.
If anybody else would like extra copies of it, let me know. I can send it to you via email.
I cannot find any email like you told me.